Good day, it's Steve Anderson, and welcome to our webinar today. We're about 2 minutes from start time. Thought I'd make just a few announcements as everybody is coming online. You're in listen only mode, which means you should be able to hear me loud and clear. We can't hear you, that's by design, that's so everybody can hear. So if during the webinar today, you have any questions, if you go into your control panel, there's a question area, and you can type any questions you want in that area, and we will work to address as many of those questions as we can today further along in the presentation. So we've got a lot of good content today, and we have some very special guests that we're going to feature that are going to have some things to say as well. So we're excited to have you with us. It's exciting for dentistry to be back going online again after several weeks of crisis and chaos, and good to be back seeing patients. And we're eager to share some experience here that we hope will be helpful no matter what stage that you're in as you go back to work. So we're about a minute away from the top of the hour. So again, you're in listen only mode. That means you should be able to hear me loud and clear. We cannot hear you. That's to eliminate any background noise. If at any time during the webinar you have questions, you're welcome to post those in the question area of your control panel on your computer, and we'll work to address as many of those as we possibly can. So we have practices that are tuning in from all over North America, including Canada today. And we're going to try and be as inclusive as possible. I realize there's all kinds of different circumstances across the continent in terms of start dates and everything that is happening. So we're trying to be sensitive to that. And so we'll try and cover all of the bases. There will be CE that will be available for today's webinar. At the end of the webinar, I'll provide you a link that will take you to the quiz that'll be a part of today's webinar. You get to prove that you attended and that you learned something. So there's just a 10 question quiz that you can take for 1 hour of CE credit today. So again, thanks for being with us. Steve Anderson here. Today is being recorded and will be posted at crowncouncil.org at the conclusion of this webinar once it processes, so that if you have other team members that would like to watch, that will be available, as well as 1 hour of continuing education credit. We'll provide the link for that. You can take the quiz and be provided that CE credit. We have a number of guests today live that we'll be introducing you to, as well as some recorded interviews that I've done over the last couple of days. And as I mentioned just previously, we have those listening from all over the continent and in various stages of reopening. Some have already started seeing patients, some are anticipating that next week. A lot of different experiences and questions that have come up over the last week or so. I'm going to try and be as inclusive as possible and sensitive to all the different stages of opening up. And we hope that today will be a good resource that will help you, regardless of what stage you're in, to open up better and serve your patients. Just as by way of explanation, so that just so that you know where we are coming from. There are several different organizations involved in today's presentation. First, the Crown Council, which is an affiliation of dental practices all over North America and around the world that are committed to creating a culture of success in their practice. They are bound together by a philosophy of doing business, of dental practice. You'll hear reference to that. Most of you that are listening are members of the Crown Council. There will be some resources here that I'll mention that are available on the Crown Council website. Those of you that may not be familiar with the Crown Council, you can go to crowncouncil.com for more information about the Crown Council. Crown Council is also runs the largest charitable foundation in dentistry, smilesforlife.org. Smiles for Life runs one of the largest fundraising activities in the dental industry. Many of you are involved in Smiles for Life, and we are announcing today that we will make an announcement about the Smiles for Life campaign coming up, not today, but some very exciting things about Smiles for Life. We've had a lot of questions about that, and that is coming in the days ahead. So please stay tuned for that. You'll also hear reference today to Total Patient Service. The Total Patient Service Institute is an education consulting company that does education seminars, as well as has a large team of what we call practice advisors that work directly with practices every day, implementing the highest level of case acceptance skills and patient service. You're going to hear from two of our practice advisors today, Tanya Bailey, who is in the practice of Dr. Chris Kirby and David Vaca in Longview, Texas, as well as Robin Tyson, who is in the practice of Dr. Chad Boger in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So they'll be with those doctors today, and you'll hear live from them later on in our webinar. We're going to cover 5 topics today in this order. First, a topic that has been well discussed this week is fee or no fee for PPE. That's a tongue twister. With all of the additional things that most practices are doing to keep the team and the patients safe, there is additional cost associated with that. And a topic of discussion is, should we be charging an additional fee for that? And if so, how do we do that? We'll talk about that first off today. Returning or reluctant, this has to do with your patients and patient attitudes toward coming to the dentist. We'll talk about some specific things you can do to make that experience more comfortable for your patients. Third topic will be I'm not coming back, and this has to do with team member concerns about coming back to work, especially as it has to do with infection control and safety. We'll also talk about making the schedule work with concerns about additional PPE. How does that impact the schedule, and how do you make the schedule work moving forward? And finally, what we call smothered in PPE and continuing to deliver total patient service. How do you continue to deliver a high touch experience when we are in an era of social distancing and all armed up? We'll have some specific suggestions, as well as a few others as we move forward. So for starters, topic number 1, fee or no fee for PPE. I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Chris Kirby and Dr. David Vaca, who practice in Longview, Texas. They are with our practice advisor from the Total Patient Service Institute, Tanya Bailey. And they have some experience that they will share as it has to do with their decision about a fee for PPE and how they went about that decision. So Tanya, welcome, and thanks for being with Dr. Kirby and Dr. Vaca today. And why don't you share with us, with their help, kind of the process that has been developed and kind of the decision that was made in terms of fee for PPE.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. Hi. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you great.
Fantastic. So I'm really fortunate to be here in their practice today. And we actually had a team meeting last week with the whole team and did some strategy on how to manage the additional costs for PPE. And I'm going to let them kind of explain how we went through that process and arrived at what they came up with.
Perfect.
Hey, Steve.
Hello, gentlemen. You're looking a lot more casual than you are in your website photo.
I had to swim my colors a little bit.
We didn't know we were going to be live on camera.
Yeah,
You're live on camera. You're looking great. It's a work day, so go for it.
that's right. So we had a meeting with our team. We discussed on how we're going to pay for PPE. So one concern was making it seem like we were nickel and diming our patients with additional fees here and there. And we kind of like pride ourselves on being seamless and, like you said, being warm with confidence. And we decided to kind of incorporate a fee increase kind of along the board, which we needed to do anyway. And it's totally going to cover any of our PPE. They'll never see it. Very seamless, and I think a little more professional.
Excellent.
You know, and to add to that, we also thought if we had a separate PPE fee as opposed to just spreading it across the board, would it generate questions in patients' mind? Well, what were you doing before? You know, and we wanted it to seem normal. This is the way we've always done business. And, you know, this is a little off the subject, but I'm going to brag on my team because this is the first real week we've been back to work. But they looked confident this whole week, and they made it look this was just business as usual, even though they had, you know, face shields on and different PPE equipment. To me, that's the key. Our team looked like they were ready, and this is just the way we do business. And so the PPE fee just didn't really even come up.
Yeah. In addition, one thing that our team did somewhat is a little bit of role playing. I don't know if everybody's opened up yet or not. I know some states have, and I have friends in other states that are mandated to wear certain equipment. But role play, practice that stuff, get in a rhythm of it, go outside and watch people coming into your practice, or watch it from the outside of your building, because your community is watching, and figure it out and commit to it. Just like rolling that 10-footer on number 18 for birdie, you know, you got to commit to the speed and line. Whatever you decide, commit to it, and then be consistent.
Love it. Have you been hitting a few golf balls the last few weeks there, Vaca?
Yeah, maybe a couple.
We appreciate the golf analogy. That's very appropriate. Thank you.
But I think the main thing David said is just being prepared. You know, and having Tanya here has been a huge help. We had team meetings, we role played, so we were ready before we saw our first patients.
Fantastic. Thank you. Tanya, anything you'd add?
I think, you know, taking the increase on the fee, we spent a lot of time, like they just said, going through that and going through the reasoning behind it so that the team was on board, and then got it rolled out. And like they said, watching them with their patients yesterday, everything was easy and seamless. So it's planning, strategy, and preparation. Perfect.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing. Tanya, thanks for all of your help. And Dr. Kirby, Dr. Vaca, thanks for sharing today. We appreciate it. Good luck.
Good to see you. Everybody have a good weekend.
Thanks so much. All right. So that's one case study. And not to say that that's what everybody should do. I will say this, they are almost 100% fee for service, and that makes a difference. So if you're not fee for service and you are contracted, then your decision might be a little bit different. So let me give you some criteria here that might help as you go through the decision-making process, as well as how you handle this. So number one, are you contracted or are you fee for service? If you're fee for service, that gives you a little bit more latitude than if you are contracted. There are some insurance companies that are paying for an additional PPE fee. They're limited, but there are some. I saw a message from United Concordia this week that said that they'll pay $10 per patient visit. And then there are others, I've seen others that have categorically said they will absolutely not pay for it. So that's one thing to consider. Now, one thing also to consider is that PPE as a thing, there is no code for it. The ADA has suggested a miscellaneous code, 1999, but that's a miscellaneous code. There is no PPE fee. I anticipate that in the next revision of coding, which will come out at the end of the year, there will be a specific fee for PPE. So one thing to consider if you are contracted is it is in most contracts, you can add fees for things that do not have a code associated with them. So for example, we've had a lot of contracted practices that have added a fee, a non-coded fee for PPE. They've come up with various names for it, like a compliance fee as one that's come up. So again, different circumstances based on what your practice, where your practice is. The second is to review your profit and loss statement and your budgets. Where were you before all this started? And where did your supply budget rest? How much were you actually spending? What was your overall profitability? It's a good time to revisit that and see where you are overall before you make any decisions. Third is, what is your estimated costs of additional PPE? So do you have an idea of the additional things that you are going to be doing and what the cost associated with that is? And then breaking that down to a per patient visit idea of what it's really costing you to do this. The next one is really critical. This is a fee analysis strategy update. So we recommend that you do a fee analysis every year where you see where your fees land compared to your market data. Now, that's one thing that Dr. Vaca and Dr. Kirby did, is they did their fee analysis just recently within the last 2 weeks and found that their fees in many cases were below, much below what the market was doing. And so they made some adjustments in their case that well offset the PPE fee. So that fee analysis strategy update is critical. I'll give you a resource today where, if you have not done that in some time, we'll give you a resource where you can go through and do that strategy, do that update, so you know exactly where you are compared to your market. And then finally, do you have the right verbal skills in place? If you are going to charge for something, do you have a good way to explain this to patients so that they understand it? So those are 5 suggestions. Again, there is no one answer for every single practice. All of these things make a difference in terms of the decision that you make. So again, we recommend that you go through and you consider each of these points, especially number 4 and number 5, when you made your decision, so that you make a well thought out decision and you're prepared and you've got good reasoning behind it. So I hope that helps in terms of providing some context for that. But again, no one answer for every single practice, a lot of different things to consider. All right, number 2 category or topic today is returning or reluctant. This has to do with your patients and patient attitudes about, especially after a time when we've been shelter in place across the continent. Now people coming out, not just to the dentist, but really going back and doing all kinds of different things. What are their attitudes? How do you manage that? So I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Blake Cameron. Blake practices in Logan, Utah. He'll share a little bit about his experience. Blake was seeing patients today, and so I recorded this short interview with him earlier this week to share his experience of coming back and patient attitudes, as well as what he did with his team to make sure they had a successful restart. This is Dr. Cameron. So I'm with Blake Cameron, and Blake practices in Logan, Utah. And Blake, you've been back seeing patients on a regular basis for the last week and a half?
Yeah, went back May 1st.
Fantastic. So share with us just backstory a little bit, what you did in terms of meeting with your team previous to opening, you know, the previous 4 to 6 weeks that you were on a more limited schedule. Tell me what you did there.
So while we were on a limited schedule, as far as getting our whole team together, we had about 3 team meetings, Zoom meetings all together. And then I had meetings with each individual team. Our team's about 12 people. So we have a hygiene, a front office, and an assistant team. So some all together and some with individual groups. I personally found my team is not extremely open on a Zoom call with everyone. So having the smaller groups was frankly a lot more effective.
Excellent. So now over the last week and a half that you've been now back to resuming schedule, and you've been very busy, I understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Tell me what your meeting schedule looks like, has looked like for the last week and a half, and what your plan is moving forward.
Sure. So we had our regularly scheduled monthly meeting the first Tuesday we were back. We do those in the mornings. And then part of what we did before we started was discuss the importance of starting some weekly meetings. So I actually had my front office staff rearrange our schedule. They did have to move some patients so that every Tuesday morning, that's the day when all of us work. The first hour of the day, we're together going through, we're focusing on schedule, like time blocks, our chart prep and our relationship links. So everyone's splitting up in their little teams to discuss what's working, what's not working on those 3 topics. So we can kind of work out the kinks that we're running into as we adapt to kind of this new normal.
Nice. And then you're doing your morning meeting every day?
Yeah, that one's 15 minutes before we start every day. We're continuing with that. That's always invaluable.
Is there anything else you're doing in addition to those things in terms of, communicating with the team and keeping everybody and adapting to new things that you're doing? Anything else you're doing from a communication standpoint that works?
Yeah, I've sent out when we've gotten something new, like we finally got our thermometers in, things like that. I send a quick email out to everyone so that they know, hey, we've got this. This is who's in charge of doing it. This is how it's going to play out. Please ask questions as you need to. I've also tried to up my efforts to show appreciation to my team for the little things they're doing to make all this work. Yeah. At least once a week. Again, it's a group email, so everyone hears the praise happening. I know people appreciate that, and I think it keeps it positive as we need to work through things that can be challenging.
Week and a half in, anything that you would have done differently knowing what you know now?
I guess prepared for how busy we are.
Good news, right?
We had no idea what to prep for, but patients in general have been very grateful to be able to come back in. And while, yeah, we've had some fallout, we've had a lot more demand. So just preparing ourselves for the chaos.
Fantastic. Good news.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing. Appreciate it.
You bet.
So we're appreciative to Dr. Blake Cameron for sharing with us his experience. 2 things that I just mentioned about this. One is the importance of staying on track with regular team meetings through this time. Dr. Cameron has been doing this for, during the entire time, and as moving forward, continues to have weekly team meetings, daily morning meetings to keep the team communicating, adapting, and figuring out what to do. There's many things you can plan for and things that have to be figured out. We call it FIO, F-I-O, figure it out. So one of our recommendations is continue your regular team meetings, morning meeting every day, weekly meeting for at least an hour. Keep the team connected, communicating so you can work through the kinks and the rough spots. Second thing is assumptive verbal skills, and I'll just add this to what Blake shared, is we're finding a lot of success by being assumptive, meaning not making a big deal when you call patients when they're returning. So as an example, this would be when you're calling patients to say, I'm calling about your appointment on Monday at 9 o'clock with Dr. Cameron for your crown prep, whatever it is. And we're looking forward to seeing you. We'll have everything set up and ready to go. We're asking all of our patients a few health-related questions before they come in. Is now a bad time? And then ask your screening questions. So that right there is a recommended, again, it's an assumptive kind of business as usual, not making a big deal about everything that's happened and assuming that they are going to come in if they're on the schedule. Now, those obviously that have missed their appointment because you were not able to see them in the last few weeks, obviously that would be a different set of verbal skills. But for those that are on the schedule, it's a very assumptive conversation. Now, here is what we do not recommend. We do not recommend saying any of the following. Are you ready to come in? Or do you feel safe to come in? Or we're finally open again. Are you ready? In other words, making it a big deal will make it a big deal for your patients. So again, take a very assumptive approach, comfortable, and welcome them to the practice. But again, very assumptive, very comfortable, not to make a big deal about it. So hope that helps. One of the things that I appreciated, and we've heard this a lot from all over the continent for those that have started seeing patients on a more regular schedule, is for the most part, the enthusiasm, the response, patients are coming in, they're getting their dental work done. Are there exceptions? Absolutely. But for the most part, what we're hearing is great success in having patients come back with great attitudes. So many times, we'll talk about this in just a minute, your patients will mirror your attitude. If you're tentative, they'll be tentative. If you're nervous, they'll be nervous. So again, taking an assumptive attitude in your verbal skills goes a long way. All right, third topic, I'm not coming back. This has to do with team member concerns in a little different era. Now that we've been through several weeks of being offline, there are occasionally team members that have concerns, understandably so. So we're going to talk about how to handle those. This is Dr. Jeff Roy. Jeff is in Las Colinas, Texas, Irving, Texas, which is a suburb of Dallas, just outside of those of you that have flown into the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport have flown into Dr. Roy's town. He practices with Dr. Kent Smith. And earlier this week, I spent a few minutes with Dr. Roy talking about team member concerns and how they handled that in their practice as they came back online. This is Dr. Jeff Roy. So we're with Dr. Jeff Roy in Las Colinas, Texas. Jeff, welcome. You just got done seeing patients all day.
I just hopped out of an appointment.
And you're looking very nice in your monogram starch lab coat, which you have that in like dozens, right?
Yeah.
So you all have been back at it, and you've got a big team. Why don't you just, so everybody understands the context, number of team members?
30, probably around 30 full-time, or at least before this, and with part-timers up to 35, and, you know, a partner, Dr. Kent Smith, and associate Ashley Bristow. So pretty big team, and an endodontist and a periodontist that comes in on occasion. You
got a big crew. You're running a big operation. You've been at it for a week, right? You've been back seeing patients on a more predictable schedule for about a week. Talk to us a little bit about before, when you were staging everything to come back, team member reservations, concerns. What was that like?
Yeah, before we actually got them in, you know, we were in constant communication, which you guys had really coached us on, you know, don't lose contact during the 7 weeks. So there's been constant communication. But once we shifted gears and said, hey, we're coming back, I know there were a few emails where I don't think they really believed we were coming back. So
okay.
I sent some information out, and I told my partner, Dr. Smith, I'm like, hey, send one out really direct and succinct. I don't think that, you know, there was a barrier, you know, it's just there was fear, there was not wanting to leave for whatever reason. There were legitimate reasons of not wanting to leave, and with kids and homeschooling, so it was tough.
Okay.
So we had to get very clear about our directions.
Clear that there was going to be a definitive start date, and we are coming back. And right. You had some concerns about safety, right?
Right. Yeah. You know, they were worried about what it was going to be like when they got back. They couldn't visualize it, even though they had. You know, I leave the document on my desk, but you know, they had that. It had been emailed to them before they came back, so they would know it. But was a lot of concern about it, seeing it in practice, walking through the steps, and they wanted to do that.
So we'll talk a minute about what you did before you started seeing patients. I know that across the board in a lot of places, and I think you went through this, some confusion about unemployment benefits versus coming back to work. And I think you had some of that.
Yeah. So I think some people thought, well, it might be optional. You know, this is, I might could just stay home, but we made it clear that we had reserved their job for them, and now it was time to come back to work. They were all invited back to work. You know, and the expectation was that they would either be there or they would understand that they couldn't draw unemployment anymore. It wouldn't be there for them, or if it was, you know, it would be fraudulent to get it. So
right. So the benefits were available until you guys opened back up, and so that clarification I think helped a lot. So first thing, before you started seeing patients, you brought the whole team back together a couple of days in advance. Tell us what you did several days before you started seeing patients.
Yeah, so obviously anybody that's trying to get their team back knows that there's resistance and there's fear. You know, some people are just going through it. We went through it. And so what I would tell Kent is like, look, you know, the biggest part of starting is just starting. We need to get them in. They need to go through their normal routine. They need to set their alarm clock like they haven't in 7 or 8 weeks. Go through the drive, the commute, do all the things they've been doing. I had very little expectations for them the first day, really the first week. Last week was a soft week for us, but we did see some patients. But really, it was just about coming in, getting used to being here, realizing, you're going to be okay. We're all going to be okay. You're actually in the safest place in the Metroplex. And with repetition, that just kind of naturally happened.
And we did some couple of days of training, right, before regular patient flow. Tell her a bit about that.
Yeah, so the first day was just like, here's our policy, our in-house policy. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do when we call them to confirm them. This is what we're going to do when they get here, how we're going to text them, and, just every step of, at the front door, greeting them, taking their temperature, asking them questions. Nobody was coming through the door that was potentially sick, but it was all done in a very polite, warm, welcoming way. And the team got to see it in action. So I think by everybody walking through the steps, role playing, they gained confidence in the process.
Perfect. You've been at it a week. What is it like now?
Well, last week we trained with you guys, with TOPS. We had Tanya out on Wednesday. We trained just kind of what we were doing on Monday. The hygiene team saw patients about half staff last Tuesday and Thursday, a lot of spacing, just getting everything down. And then, what they learned, we gave them extra time, but what they learned was really they can do it in the same time. But they kind of just had to get in there and do it and feel it. And we didn't push it. We kind of let them figure that out. But this week, most of them were saying, hey, you know what? I don't even want that extra 10 minutes. We want to get back to what we were doing, and they were ready to go. So this week, last week was kind of soft, but this week we've been full steam ahead.
Yeah, plenty of patients coming in.
Plenty of patients coming in. I know there's different pools of them, but
yeah,
we're kicking off the ones that want to come, and right now we've got plenty.
Knowing what you know now, if you were talking to somebody who is now starting back, what would you tell them?
You just, you're going to have to push them. You're going to ask them to come back, and there's going to people say, I think, or maybe, or I feel like, or my doctor maybe, and at that time you're not rude, but we all need a push in life, and you just say, I'll see you Monday at 8 o'clock, whatever your time is. That became the response, not in a rude way, but it's like, it's
game day.
We all need to push. We all need to push, and so that was critical. And once we did it, people showed up, and now we're back.
Back and seeing patients, and like you said, one of the safest places for people to be in one of the largest metropolitan areas in the country.
And we've got to believe that. I think that we believe that. The biggest part of, you see your team gain confidence, and once they start gaining confidence, it's just things start happening like they always did. Everything becomes automatic. People are looser with the patients. We coach that up early. Like, we realize you're nervous, but I gave my team the example. I'm like, when I'm on the flight, and I don't fly as much as some of you do, but I'm like, if we hit some turbulence or something's not right, I immediately look at the flight attendant.
Right.
And if they're cool, I'm cool. And so I gave them that example. I'm like, we're the flight attendant. Everybody's looking at us to be cool. We just got to believe in what we do, and they'll see it in us. They'll feed off us, and we'll feed off each other.
Great word picture, 100%. Love it. Jeff, thanks for taking a minute to share with us, and congrats on getting back up and running full steam ahead. And thanks for everything you're doing.
Thank you, Steve, and thanks to everyone on the forum. The teamwork is, we couldn't have done it without each other, so I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks. Great. Our thanks to Dr. Jeff Roy for his comments and experience. Here's a quick summary of some things that you might consider doing as a team as you move through going back to a more predictable schedule. Number one is restate the intention. I think it's everyone's intention to keep everyone involved safe, team members, patients, everyone. And just reestablishing it, even though that almost goes without saying, that is everyone's top number one priority. So restating that, number one. Next, be factual and specific. One of the things that Jeff shared is making sure that everything that you state is factual, clarifying what the unemployment situation is, and going through the specific factual things that you've done. Next, and I appreciate Dr. Bruce Hutchison for this. Bruce is one of my mentors just outside of Washington, D.C. Bruce has been very active in the ADA for his entire career as a great leader. And as he and I interacted this week, one of the things that he emphasized was to make sure that everybody on the team understands that you have gone back and looked at the recommendations from the ADA, from the CDC, from OSHA, from state and local governments, realizing that many of the recommendations that are given by those different entities conflict. There has been conflicting information, and that you've done your best to sort through that to come up with your plan, but you're drawing from authoritative sources, not just hearsay from the internet. So that understanding and reinforcing that is critically important. And again, understanding the fact there's conflicting information, and you end up you have to make a decision based on the best information available. The second is just drawing a differentiation between opinion and science. There are a lot of opinions out there in all kinds of different areas as it has to do with the situation we're in today. And so we're all doing the best we can with what we know now. And so trying to differentiate between those two things, taking what science we do have, separating that from the different opinions that different people have so that we can make the best decision possible. Next is differentiating between mandates and recommendations. There is a huge difference between those two things. There are far more recommendations than there are mandates. A mandate is an unequivocal, yes, this is what must be done. It is the law versus recommendations. Most of what has come down from the ADA, from the CDC, have been recommendations. And a few things from OSHA have been mandates, but very few. There have been very few mandates. There have been some state and local mandates, and we have seen even in the last few days, even some of those state mandates have been overthrown and overturned. So it's a very confusing time. But differentiating in everyone's minds the difference between a mandate and a recommendation, and understanding that we're doing the best we can with the recommendations that we've been given so that we can make our own decisions for our own safety and the safety of our patients. So those are just a few suggestions as you have that conversation with your team. So those things, just as a quick summary, that you have that conversation with your team. Again, we've mentioned this over the last 6 weeks, and I thought this might bear some review, is the emotional relationship between anxiety and anger. That anxiety many times manifests itself as anger. And it's not unusual to see that coming out in patients, maybe in each other, and to understand that there's a close tie and relationship between those two things. And so the self-control question would be, when you see anger manifest, to ask yourself, what might this person be anxious about? Whether it's a patient or a fellow team member, where might they be anxious, and what can I do to relieve their anxiety? That anxiety might be coming out as anger. Key point as we provide patient service as well as work together as a team. Our next topic is making the schedule work. With the additional things that we're doing with personal protective equipment and distancing of patients, there's been a lot of questions about, do we need to revise and change our schedule to make it more manageable? I've invited Dr. David Muntz live to share with us today. Dr. Muntz has 2 locations where he practices outside of Houston, Texas, in Pearland, Texas, and Friendswood, Texas, 2 of my favorite cities in Texas, by the way. We've drawn on Dr. Muntz's expertise several times throughout this crisis. Dr. Muntz is very, very active in his community, has a very prominent position on the school board in his town. 3 years ago, went through Hurricane Harvey and was instrumental in his community at shepherding their community through that crisis. And so his experience has been invaluable. So David, welcome, and thanks for being with us today and sharing. And I'm going to unshare my screen here so we can see you. There he is. And thanks for being with us today.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Steve.
So maybe you could start and just give everybody a little bit of context. You've been back seeing patients here since when? How long have we been seeing patients on a more regular basis?
This past Monday, May 11th.
Right, so we are a week in.
We're a week in, and it's the weekend.
There you go. And tell me what your reservations and team's reservations were in terms of your schedule before you started seeing patients. What were the questions and concerns that you had?
A lot of things you mentioned. How are we going to do this with so many people coming to our practice at one time? When you have a bottleneck at the front desk, add on top of that the preparation for extra PPE. How are we going to manage all the different setups and changes and screenings, and just making sure that everybody feels safe, not only the patient, but the team. And so the time to do the extra is what we started with the mindset. But as the week has unfolded, it's really become like riding a bike. You just get back on, and it's just started back to almost normal going like it used to.
Got it. So as you worked through that process, what were the things that then helped you make the shift in terms of how you actually ended up running the schedule? What did you all do?
Well, we, like all good teams, we planned. We had a nice meeting last week before we came in. Tanya actually came in on Thursday, and we worked through the details of all the scenarios and protocols that we would probably have to discuss so that everybody felt comfortable and confident in addressing each other and the patients that came in. And so what we did is we just laid those out. We emphasized the important things, which were trying to adjust the schedule to staggered basis, avoiding bottlenecks. We moved some appointments up in hygiene and oriented the patients every single step as to what to expect when to come in. We didn't make a big deal about coming back in. We actually just wanted them to be oriented to know what was going to happen and how we were thankful that they were coming in. Our team was then able to coordinate how they would plan to prepare for the screening check-in process, the checkout process, the rescheduling process, and doctor exams. We did that a little different as well.
So now that you've worked through that, give us an idea of what your schedule is like today, now a week in, versus what it was like 2 months ago.
2 months ago, it was blowing and going, 45, 50 patients a day. We have 2 doctors and 5 hygienists in one practice, and 1 doctor and 2 hygienists in another practice. And so what that looked like was we had, 30, 60, 90-minute appointments for the typical, perio care, recare, new patient visits, blocks for perio treatment. And going into this, we were a little skeptical and nervous that that would still work. But we're pretty brazen down here. We just went in and did it. We kept our blocks the same. We just got to work early to make sure that everybody was set up, ready to go. And we made sure to emphasize that team members would make each other available to help get through any delays and so forth. So what it looked like before on a time basis was everybody started at 8:10 seeing patients. Now we've got 2 to 3 hygienists starting about 30 minutes earlier. And then we're staggering the rest of the day. So there's never going to be multiple people walking in and out of our office and or checking out and or doctor exams, making this harder for everybody, not only the team, but the patients. Right now, it's going pretty smooth. And like Dr. Roy just mentioned, they just needed to get started. It was a matter of just working through their mind and with the attitude of calmness and reassurance that this can be back to normal. And today it's Friday, and I can tell you this week, it got really, really nice and downhill about Wednesday. We were doing everything we needed to do based on the new guidelines. Staff felt comfortable. The rust was broken off, and it almost feels like it did before we got into this mess 2 months ago.
How are you doing hygiene checks?
Well, we've identified ahead of time with good chart prep who would need an exam and maybe who would not need an exam. So
Okay.
we've been thoughtful and proactive to say, this is a high-level trust patient, low risk, probably not going to need an exam this time. If they had it within a year, let's check him next time or her next time. We also said we could pull out in the hallway and do a quick, hey, I see this tooth. Here's the technology, let's use it. Intraoral photos, carry view, radiographs at a hallway computer, see what they've got, minimize that, leaving the doctor, out of the aerosol visit from breaking that time with his procedure to run over to hygiene. So with exams, we're skipping some exams. We're also assessing who needs the exam. Obviously, new patients will get the exam and so forth. We're even saying if the high-level trust patient has something to do, like a crown or a filling, we are going to catch that exam up at the time they schedule to come back to get the work and do the exam then. We can still get it in, and it worked out great. And patients are loving it. They really are. So far, so good. They're really happy with that, even being expedited out of the office on time. So it's working well.
In many states, including the state of Texas, this is more than a recommendation. This came down from the state board that the dentist is not to leave the treatment room until the patient's restorative work is complete.
Correct.
So tell us how you've dealt with that.
Well, we're just dealing with it. It hasn't been quite the same normally, but we're just making it happen. We're abiding by that rule. Obviously, we're being timely and thoughtful. So if you're going to give anesthesia, go and do that. Go do a hygiene check real quick, whatever you can get in, and then you start your procedure. And for every dentist, it's different about when they finish that procedure, whether it be a crown prep or a filling or a root canal, what have you. And we're just not leaving until the patient is pretty well situated and done with my part. Whatever we delegate off to the assistant after the fact that means it's done. We're on to the next patient or hygiene.
Right.
It works out. So far, it's working well.
That's great. I think point well taken, which is when everyone has to make their own decision. Again, every dentist is the one who has the license, and everybody has to manage themselves accordingly. There is I think the spirit of the law here, the spirit of the whole idea is anytime you're creating aerosol, right? Which is the potential danger until we get more science around that. You obviously don't want to be going in and out of the treatment room and going to other rooms, creating aerosol as you go back and forth. So there's a difference between finishing the treatment and finishing the procedure, which I think is what you're saying is you're not leaving the room until the procedure is finished. You're done your part, and then you're moving on, changing PPE, moving on to the next patient. So I think that's an important point of differentiation is different.
After any aerosol procedure, we're actually getting to a point where we're minimizing any more me time with aerosol creating dentistry in that room. And when we leave the room, the doctor, I'm taking off the gown, I'm taking off everything that we had additional, completely going to a different jacket, so to speak, and moving to whatever next exam it is, whether it's another dental appointment or a hygiene appointment for a check. It's working pretty well. There's a little bit of hiccups we had to add to our office. We had to add some books and some different spots to have available to do these in-hall consults, this PPE change and exchange, we call it. But so far it's working pretty smooth. And the aerosol has been the big buzzword this week, and that's been pretty much on board with our whole team, the common sense of, okay, that makes sense. This is what we're doing. This is good. And the patient's really funny. They don't even perceive a change that much compared to before. It's just, which is nice.
Which I think is good. That's good news once they get into it.
Patients have been great. It's been great.
Any other last parting words of advice now that you're a week into it?
The thing that stuck with me the most when Tanya came to visit was don't try to reschedule all of these patients who missed from the end of March through the beginning of May immediately. Because next March and April, you will have nobody coming to your office.
Right.
So what we've decided to do is push some of those people who missed in March and April to their next visit in September, October. Just catch up on the flip side. And some of them are just not quite ready to be safe to come in. And that's okay. We hear it from them. So we're just pushing them out. We're inviting them to go, and you'll be fine. You're low risk. Let's see you in September, October. Things have been settled down by then. And then by next March and April, you're going to have a full hygiene schedule. Otherwise, if you try to cram up everything into May and June, you might as well just go on vacation next April and March.
Good
There will
point.
be really nothing to do.
Thank you for adding that. That's a key point as you manage the patient flow moving forward.
Absolutely. Manage the flow, manage it for the fluid of returning even next year. Not so much, this is the critical point right now, what we're trying to manage. But yeah, next year is important too, so we can keep that schedule on track.
Good deal. Thank you, David. Thanks for sharing with us. Glad to hear you're back up and running and that you've had a great week, and best of luck next week as well.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks so much.
Great. So hope that helps. That is, again, Dr. Muntz's experience. Everybody's experience might be a little bit different, but we felt his experience this last week would be of value. Here's a couple of just summary points. This is a shot of a flight simulator. Flight simulator is a flight deck, never leaves the ground. And what you see in the windshield is computer programming that simulates different in-flight experiences. One thing that has been consistent that you heard from Dr. Muntz and others that we hear from all across the country is the value of doing a simulator before you start seeing patients and having a discussion and working through the different issues. So there is value in the flight simulator. In this case, working through how long does it take to change your PPE? How are you going to bring patients in and out? Actually simulating that experience before you do it if you have not gone back yet. There's great value in that in terms of team level comfort and as well as fine-tuning things down to a way that you can make them work. So consider the flight simulator as you work through, and even after you start seeing patients, simulate things and how you can do them better. Our next topic area is smothered in PPE and continuing to deliver total patient service. The whole topic around personal protective equipment has been huge. There have been shortages all over the country, not only in dentistry, but in medicine. Just finding the appropriate PPE has been a big challenge. I want to just give a big plug and a thank you to our Crown Council team that has for the last few weeks just done an amazing effort in doing something that we never anticipated doing, which is sourcing and finding reasonably priced PPE. And we have been fortunate to do that. We have been sourcing it and providing it at cost to those who need it. So we've been very pleased to be able to do that for Crown Council members all over the country. It's been one of dentistry's biggest and most pressing problems. That is not something we envision doing long term, but because the need existed and what is one of the most pressing problems that everyone is facing, and we had some connections, we're very pleased to do that. So this is a mini website that you can use to access what is available. So this is a bit.ly, which instead of putting the huge website address on the screen, this will help you a little bit. So it's bit.ly/Crown Books. This was our original bookstore that we had, and we have added the PPE that is available. And again, we're providing it at cost. Wherever we can source it for whatever the price is, we can source it. That price can change from order to order. So we're doing it in bulk and passing on whatever the bulk rate is. So we hope that's helpful for everybody, and hope that, like I said, I don't know how long that will continue. We are not going to be in competition with the dental supply companies, but everybody's had a big challenge there, and so we hope that will should help. If you have any questions about on arrival times, stay tuned to the Crown Council email network. We're keeping everyone posted on terms of when shipments arrive and when we're shipping them out. So we hope that's helpful, and it's our hope that we can help move things and get things back and make it work. Next is providing total patient service in a time of heightened concern and PPE. I took this shot of a local physician's office here in Dallas, Texas, as an example of what not to do. So plastered with all the stop signs and the warning signs, this is the first thing that you encounter when you go into the office. I do not recommend this. It just creates a heightened sense of alarm, and I think this is the last thing we need. Good intentioned, but certainly not the spirit of what we want to communicate with total patient service. I want to thank Dr. Chuck Skinner in Colorado for this that he sent us of something that they are doing as an example. This is just one example. They've added some things to their office, and so this is the sign that they put up in front of their office in contrast to what you just saw from the local physician. So my recommendation here would be to do things that welcome your patients. And you might add, if you feel compelled to put anything on the door, is you might put a big welcome sign, and you might list all of the additional things that they might notice that you've done to improve and ensure their safety and give them peace of mind that they're being treated appropriately. So food for thought, but keep it friendly. Again, I think your patients will take a cue from you, and keep it friendly, warm, and informative. This is a new word that I had never heard before. Maybe it's been around, not sure, but it's the word Smize, and Smize means smiling with your eyes. In a time of increased PPE, this is one of the things that you might practice as a team, is how you smile with your eyes, even if your mouth is covered up with a mask. You can tell when someone is smiling. So don't forget to smile even behind your mask and all your PPE to create a warm, friendly, and inviting environment for all of your patients. We had this conversation just briefly with Dr. Muntz, and let me just re-emphasize the difference between conversing and producing, the difference between a patient appointment and doing actual treatment. And we've had a lot of conversations with practices over the last couple of weeks about this difference, about how you greet your patients, about the degree of PPE you have in different situations. Again, everybody's got to make their own decision, but there is a difference between a patient visit and actually producing and being in a procedure. So you might think about that and talk about it as a team. Again, how do you keep this balance between patient service and protection? There is a good balance. So with that, I love Dr. Roy's flight attendant analogy, which your patients will cue from you. If you're nervous, if you're anxious, if you're all armed up and protected, they'll take their cues from you. So be a great flight attendant. And one of my favorite examples of this, not just flight attendants, but a flight crew. Most of you have seen the story about Captain Sully and his landing that US Airways flight years ago on the Hudson River. You can get on YouTube today and listen to the flight data recorder from that flight as he landed the plane. And he was about as cool as they come. You would never know he was in the middle of an emergency crisis. Just was amazing. So again, your patients take their cues from you. The more comfortable, the more confident you are, then the more comfortable they will be as well. One of the things that I've recommended over the last few weeks, and I'll repeat this again, is one of our Crown Council mentors, Chris Malone, who did a presentation for us not too long ago on his book entitled The Human Brand. Chris's combination, his formula is warmth and competence. Warmth and competence for any brand, because every brand does have a human aspect to it. And so any decision that you make should take those two characteristics in consideration. How can you demonstrate competence and do the right thing while at the same time retain your humanity and your warmth? If you'd like to listen to that presentation, you can go to crowncouncil.org, and Chris's his presentation is featured. He is our featured mentor of the month today, entitled The Human Brand. I'd encourage you, if you have not watched that, or if it's been a while since you have listened to it, to go listen to Chris Malone. It's a great reminder, especially in today's times, of how we need to retain our humanity and at the same time continue being very, very competent. Now, I promised you 5 things today. We've covered all 5 of those, and I've got a bonus, which is our 6th category, which is lessons learned. A lot of lessons learned in the last couple of weeks, and I've invited Dr. Chad Boger from Minneapolis, Minnesota area to join us. He is with our practice advisor, Robin Tyson. And Chad has, I'm a big Chad Boger fan. I'm a huge Boger family fan. Chad is a 2nd-generation dentist and bought his father's practice and has done what I believe every great son should do, which is built on greatness. Dr. Steve Boger built a great practice. Chad has taken that just to a whole nother level, taken everything that he learned growing up and has just expanded and created an amazing dental practice. And so I've asked Chad and Robin just to share with us quickly. They're live with us from just outside of Minneapolis. So there they are. Chad, you're looking a little different live than you were on your website picture too. Welcome.
COVID beard. I finally a little gray here. It's not quite thin.
There you go. Lessons learned right there. So you've had a great experience coming back. Give everybody just a little characterization of your team, size of your practice, so they understand context.
Yeah, we've grown since my dad started, and we're about 43 people now in one building. So that has provided its own little challenges over the years to get that big, and the lumps and bumps you take getting there. And we just got the news last week that we could start this week from the governor. So that was about a week earlier than we had anticipated. So that also threw a little bit of, oh boy, we thought we were on track to get everything organized. Then, oh, we had a week. So we had some decisions to make about what do we do this week. So that's where we're at now. I don't know if you had another question you're going to ask, otherwise.
Absolutely. So your concerns and your team's concerns about going to a more predictable schedule what were your biggest concerns last week as you anticipated seeing more patients?
Well, I think the same that everybody said is just, oh, what's going to happen? We had been talking to them all along about, hey, communicating over the weeks and months since, we kept up the regular Zoom meetings and made sure that we were all talking about what was happening, what we had learned. There was a big lull in the middle where we knew we weren't going back to work. So then all of a sudden it was, oh, hey, we're back to work. And so it was, a shock to the system to say what's happening. School was still out for a few more weeks, and, all the uncertainty with, the hygiene webinars were, fear of God's coming, we're going to all die. And so there was and then we had not established exactly what was going to happen. Many people hadn't been in the office. We had assistants through, like many of us. So it was like, oh, there's so much unknown. So we were processing all the same things that everybody else was doing. We just all of a sudden had this fear of it starting next week, and what do we do now?
Yeah, quick. So you had a quick turnaround. So what's made the biggest difference for you this week? Now that you've been through the whole week and you've kind of smoothed out all the bumps, what's made the biggest difference for you and your team?
I thought about that and why so many of them feel confident about coming back. And some of it, is not just specific actions that we've taken the last couple weeks or the meetings that we've done. And some of it's been, years in the making. You mentioned my father and the team that had started. Well, we had always been a team that, had regular meetings and engaged with them. The team knew that we were investing in them. We had tops and practice advisors coming in and working on communication skills, listening to them, having protocols where if team members had concern that we were actually going to engage and listen with them. So doing that over the years, just they knew that even though we hadn't solved everything but we were going to, and that when they have concerns that they have a place to go to. So having those in place, we have grown over time. So some people have been with us, 20, 15, 10 years. That's a long time to have a track record. And then some of those younger people in the practice, they look to these leaders. I think we did a good job over the time. When you get to 43, you really need to, this isn't all just the doctor saying something and everybody believes in it. You have to do this with leaders that you've elevated, engaged, and empowered to make decisions. And to have a pulse of the whole team too requires, many people having their fingers out, just checking on who really does have concerns and what are they. So having a leadership team has been essential to keeping this going and keeping the communication lines open.
What do you feel like you know today versus what you knew a week ago? A week ago, you were anticipating coming back, trying to pull everything together. What do you feel like you know today?
You know, right before the offices all closed down in March, we had gone through, Pam and Chris were out, and they had gone through the whole grief. You know, we had a whole seminar on grief. And, you know, we weren't thinking about the grief we were about to have, but, you know, in relating to, hey, when a patient gets an unexpected, you know, diagnosis and they have all these cavities, and how do you listen to them and, you know, not just jump in and try to answer their question, or is it anger or anxiety that you had just mentioned before? That's a part of the grief process. So it was essential that we had gone through that right before this all happened, because it allowed me just to process my own thoughts. The minute that all of a sudden we're closed and you're denial, how could this happen? And then, you know, trying to, you know, bargain with yourself and, you know, well, what could we do? Do we have to put on gowns now as much and face masks? And then finally coming to acceptance. But then you reflect and you watch your own other owners, or you watch your team members go through this, and watching them go through it really allowed me at least, and many of us, to then not have as much judgment with the reactions and the feelings that they were all having. And so sometimes it was just the unknown, or they were fearful of their health, and okay, well, let's hear it, and then let's talk about what our solutions are. It's been really good to be a part of the webinars that you put on, because they've been so, instead of all the fear and all the unknowns, it's okay, well, now that we know this, what can we do? So having optimism and having solutions, and when people are also able to say, okay, yes, I can see it, or I can put this on, I can be in the office, it really makes a big difference, and allow them the space to feel how they're feeling, knowing that you've made good decisions and you're thinking about them. And then once they are a part of it, and they have control over some of these things, I think they're really gonna feel a lot better.
If somebody were sitting here today anticipating going back to a more predictable schedule next week, like you were a week ago, in summary, what would you tell them?
Well, I guess my thought is, since we're trying to figure it all out still, is, you know, I mean, we're going to go into with some strong convictions about what we think is what we need to do, but I'm going to keep an open mind and listen to the people and listen to all of us and say, okay, how did that work? What are we going to do different? So we need to keep making sure we have the team meetings and engage with our leaders and our team members to say, okay, well, how can we make this better? Because when you have a team that's engaged in the outcome, they're going to come up with some solutions too.
Excellent. Now I'm gonna put you on the spot here, Robin. You're next, because you get to say what he won't say, which is,
what's that?
You're sitting next to a great leader, and I know that because I know what kind of practice Chad leads. From your perspective, what's made the biggest difference?
I mean, I think their leadership. I mean, that is so key to all of this, is having leaders that are engaged, that have invested over and over and over again in the education of the team, in making it better. You know, I mean, I know, you know, Dr. Steve started that tradition, and Chad has carried that on as he has continued to grow the practice. And I know the team totally believes in the leadership that they have, from the investment perspective, the listening, all of those different things that he mentioned.
Perfect. Any parting comments from either of you in terms of moving forward?
Surround yourself with great people.
Yeah.
Amen. Very good. Thanks so much for sharing with us, and congrats on a great first week, and more of the same.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Very good. Thanks to Dr. Boger, and also to Robin for taking the time to share with us today. In summary, here is a recommendation. I've shared with this in previous webinars. This is great advice from one of our mentors, Lanny Basham, Olympic gold medalist and brain trainer. 3 critical questions as we all move forward to ask on a regular basis. Number 1, what's working? What is working now that we want to keep doing? So every day as we move through this process, to ask ourselves, what is working that we want to duplicate, that we want to continue doing? Number two, what did we learn? So what did we learn today? Typically, we learn most from our mistakes. So what were some things that maybe didn't go so well that we learned some lessons and we want to make some changes? And then finally, what are we going to do? What are the key things that we're going to do moving forward that will make the biggest difference? So we recommend those three questions on a move forward basis as you work through the kinks and smooth out the rough spots as you see patients. Let me make just a quick mention about hygiene. Hygiene has been a hot topic of conversation all over the country the last couple of weeks with varying different mandates and recommendations, but mainly mandates from state to state that have come down from state boards and from governments. One of the things to consider as you work through those is some points of differentiation, which is what is the difference between a hygiene visit and a perio visit? What is the definition of routine? There are a lot of different terms and terminologies that are being used around the country that you've got to sort through and understand. Let me just give you one example in the state of Texas. The state board at the insistence of the governor came out with a mandate that there were to be no ultrasonics used for hygiene procedures. Then the day after that, the legal counsel for the state board differentiated between hygiene procedures and perio procedures. That was not originally defined in the mandate. So that differentiation of what you can do in a perio procedure, treating periodontal disease, versus what you can do in a hygiene procedure. So there's a lot of languaging going on across the country. There are no clear answers across the board from state to state. Every state is different. What we would recommend is that you very carefully look at the difference between recommendations and mandates, very carefully read the language, ask questions if you're not sure, ask questions, go to the source, make sure you're dealing with what exactly the facts are instead of just leaning on your own interpretation. If there is a lack of clarity, ask for more clarity from the source. So food for thought on that. We hope that helps. Resources that we would recommend moving forward. First off, we mentioned early on in the webinar today the value of having a PPE, or excuse me, a PPE strategy and PPE fee strategy. If you have not done a fee analysis and have not put this strategy together, we are providing that at Total Patient Service for free. That you can email us, you can call us as well, but email us, include your name, your practice name, and your zip code, and we will schedule a PPE fee strategy short consult over the phone with your fee analysis, with an actual document that'll help you sort through. Should you charge a PPE fee? Should you not? What are the alternatives? How do you do that? It is a key decision that has to be made by every practice now. So we would recommend that. Shoot us an email. Feel free to give us a call. Just include your name, your practice name, and your zip code and your contact information. And our team at Total Patient Service will help walk you through a sound PPE fee strategy so that you can move forward in that area with confidence. We're announcing today, and this is at the request of many of you around the country. Several weeks ago, we took our total immersion course online. We'll be doing another one of those on June 12th. You can register for that at totalpatientservice.com or give us a call on our toll-free number that's on the screen. We consider that essential training for every team member to provide total patient service. In an era now where we're all armed up and it's even more difficult to provide great service, we're providing the tools to be able to do that as a unified team, to be able to present all of your treatment in a way that makes sense, in a warm, humane, and competent way. Now more than ever, critical that we deliver total patient service. So as a team, we encourage you to participate. There is a very special online tuition that makes it very, very affordable, so you can distance learn that. We encourage you to join us. We have had hundreds and hundreds of team members from across the country the last few weeks that have participated in this, and we feel like it's making a huge difference, especially now in how you deliver total patient service. So we invite you to join us on June 12th. Finally, if you would like to receive CE credit for our webinar today that has now lasted 1 hour and 15 minutes, you can just copy and paste this mini website into your browser, and it will take you to the website. In fact, I'll click on it, show you what you will see. That you can go to that website, and it will show you the link to the CE course, or excuse me, the CE quiz that you can take to make sure that you get 1 hour of credit today. Sorry, I'm bouncing around here. 1 hour of credit today for our webinar. We're happy to provide that to those that have participated through the entire experience today. So we've covered a lot of ground. Again, the website address for the fee analysis, let me go back to that. Quick question is answers@totalpatientservice.com. So there it is again. Let me play those again. So answers@totalpatientservice.com. That's the email address if you'd like the fee analysis strategy. And again, if you'd like CE for today, there's the website that you can click on to shortly. This webinar will be posted on the Crown Council website at crowncouncil.org. It will be the featured webinar later today as soon as it processes, and we will email out a link to that. If you have additional questions, feel free to email us again, answers@totalpatientservice.com. And again, on behalf of all of our teams at Total Patient Service and the Crown Council, we so much appreciate you allowing us to be part of your team as we work through a very, very interesting time and come back strong. Thanks for joining us today. Stay tuned. There's more to come. Hope you have a super weekend, a super day, and go strong as you come back. Thanks for joining us.